Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon once again. Yeah. Hello, my dear friends. My name is Darshan Narayan, and I'm a research scientist working with Government Virus Diagnostic Laboratory, Department of Health and Family Welfare Services, Government of Karnataka. Today, I'll be discussing about implementing One Health approach to confronting emerging and re-emerging zoonotic disease threats and the role of biotechnologists in it. The purpose of today's presentation is to briefly explain and make you understand the functioning of the multidisciplinary research activities under One Health concept. About 60% of the known infectious disease in humans and 75% of all the emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic. Recurring outbreaks of emerging and re-emerging zoonoses such as Ebola virus, avian influenza, and Nipah virus serve as a reminder that the health of humans, animals, and environment are interconnected, and that early response to emerging zoonotic pathogens require a coordinated, interdisciplinary, cross-sectoral approach. As our world becomes increasingly connected, emerging diseases pose a greater threat, requiring coordination at local, regional, and global levels. We as a nation have been here before, including we had close encounters with Zika, CCHF, the West Nile virus, and avian influenza in the past. The COVID-19 outbreak is just one example of how zoonotic diseases can spread into the human population. India, as of date, has 1.1 crore active COVID cases, and it had seen a death of around 1,60,000. That is 1.37 till date. The economic impact of the 2020 coronavirus pandemic in India has been largely disruptive, amounting up to rupees 29.87 lakh crores. It's almost equal to 15% of the national GDP. And in today's world, where the connection between humans, animals, and the environment becomes more intervened every day, it's crucial we address these outbreaks by focusing on the interconnectedness of all living things. This approach is described as One Health. What is One Health? One Health is an approach to designing and implementing programs, policies, legislations, and research in which multiple sectors communicate and work together to achieve better public outcomes. So you can see in the diagram that One Health is nothing but the coordinating communication and collaboration of people who protect human, animal, and environmental health and other partners. They are working together to bring out, achieve the best health outcome for people, animals, and for the environment. So the area of work in which One Health approach is particularly relevant include food safety, the control of zoonosis, and combating antibiotic resistance, and many other goals. The most of the zoonotic diseases are vector-borne diseases, and these are all One Health issues. The zoonotic diseases are caused by ticks, mosquitoes, fleas, and other vectors. These vectors feed on people and animals, including pets, livestock, and wildlife. These vector-borne diseases can have a serious impact on the health of the people and animals. People who work in human health, animal health, environment, and other relevant sectors need to work together to prevent and control these vector-borne diseases. In 1918, when we had a bigger pandemic, that is of Spain flu, an influenza pandemic of unparalleled scope and severity that swept across the globe. By the time it subsidized, the pandemic had infected around 500 million people, roughly one third of the world's population at that time, and resulted in at least 50 million deaths worldwide. One century later, outbreaks and pandemics of influenza and other infectious diseases have caused widespread human sufferings and deaths, and continue to pose major threat to public health, security, and societal and economic stability at the local, national, and global levels. The past several decades alone have seen more than 30 large-scale recurring and emerging infectious diseases. Threats have caused events ranging from fairly localized outbreaks to the current COVID-19 pandemic. The trend is expected to rise as a result of many factors, such as increased human-animal conflict, climate change, land use changes, global population growth, and increased global interconnectedness. Advancements in science and technology related to diagnostic capacities, vaccines, and antivirals have provided more effective tools for preventing and responding to infectious disease threats. Given the host of challenges associated with the timely development and deployment of strain-specific influenza vaccine, international efforts for developing a universal influenza vaccine have generated some optimism. Similarly, you might have seen in the case of COVID-19, there are many research going on for development of the COVID-19 vaccines. The movement towards a One Health approach to pandemic preparedness, which encompasses human, animal, plant, and environmental sectors, is also promising, as many infectious disease threats of significance originate among animals and cross over to humans. While many advances have been made, critical challenges remains in developing, evaluating, and deploying medical countermeasures and other interventions to adequately counter major outbreaks. On the international front, global health experts have established global governance frameworks, financing mechanisms, and legal instrumentation to support the global community to respond to infectious disease outbreaks and epidemics. Exactly after a century after the swine flu pandemic, in November 2018, an ad hoc planning committee under the auspices of the Forum on Microbial Threats at the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine has planned two sister workshops, which was conducted in Washington, to examine the lessons from influenza pandemics and other major outbreaks, to understand to the extent to which the lessons have been learned and discuss how they could be applied further to ensure that countries are sufficiently ready to future pandemics. In 2018, the global scientific community were expecting a larger pandemic in 2030. For that, they were preparing. Unfortunately, the pandemic appeared in 2020 itself. Recent progress achieved in monitoring global health security and pandemic preparedness at national and global levels, including advanced and developing nation action plans that stem from the joint external evaluation, building strong public health capacities that incorporate a One Health approach, and developing risk analysis and assessment tools to guide resource allocation. There are some critical challenges. These critical challenges and opportunities in developing and evaluating medical countermeasures, a universal vaccine, and a novel diagnostics and therapeutics, as well as strategies to secure their adequate supply and distribution, various methods and tools such as effective surveillance system and sequencing technologies to shorten the time between onset and detection, lab confirmation, and public communication of major disease outbreaks, strategies to protect supply chains and build surge capacity for essential services and infrastructure, such as emergency operation centers, and effective mechanism for stimulating meaningful coordination and communicating among various stakeholders, including multilateral organizations at national level and many other local and state levels, including the private sectors and civil societies. The COVID-19 pandemic has unveiled the importance of biotechnologists. If you look at how it has increased the importance of biotechnologists, the demand for the vaccine, drugs, and other medical products is rising day by day in an exponential pattern. The global demand could be a potential factor that can cause the growth of the biotech industry to a significant level. The biotech industry, including pharmaceutical companies, research organizations, are already being abetted by governments of different countries across the world to develop vaccines and target drug therapies to combat against the novel virus. Rising demand for development of frontline medicines and diagnostic equipment, test kits for diagnosis and treatment of novel corona has created opportunities for tremendous growth for the pharma industries. Demand for medical equipment such as ventilators and other life supporting devices Protective gears for doctors, medical and supportive staffs for nurses are also rising as the spread continues exponentially. Researchers are now encouraged to participate in research work, study of coronavirus and related virology fields. A huge scope of research and development opportunities are rising. With rising numbers of COVID infection cases day by day, the development and production of rapid testing kits are also in high demand. In this situation, the epicenter of the fight against the global pandemic challenge is the healthcare sector. Scientists and researchers from the biotech industries are working in collaboration with the IT sector to develop smart, rapid testing kits. The role of biotechnologists is to understand the interconnections of organisms and leverage the nature's toolbox to solve these complex health challenges. The Ministry of Health, Science and Technology created a common platform for scientific workers in the country. The scientific community could share their knowledge, the best practices, they could collaborate and work on the development of need-based innovations. Cutting down duplicate researcher works, this helped numerous researchers in the country to work in developing new rapid testing kits, PPEs, masks, respiratory devices, and many other medical support equipments. In a short period of time, multiple startup companies are also playing a major role by manufacturing low-cost rapid test kits, masks, hand sanitizers, etc. A One Health program can also help mitigate our country's risk of bioterrorism. Estimates show that about 80% of potential pathogens used in bioterrorism or biowarfare are common zoonotic pathogens. Raising awareness of these vulnerabilities will enhance our nation's preparedness for such risk. An example, through advanced biotechnology, biotechnologists have developed a large-scale platform to create fully human antibodies without human donors that which can target cancer, autoimmune disorders, inflammation, and infectious diseases within a short period of time. This demonstrates how a One Health approach can lead to positive impacts for human health. Scientists have been successful in modifying the genes of livestock so that they are resistant to certain animal diseases. As a result, the livestock is healthier, while at the same time avoiding the spread of diseases from livestock to human. In addition, reducing these diseases also reduce the need for antibiotics in animals and humans, thereby preserving efficacy of the antibiotics when needed. The term biotechnology basically originated from the Greek word bios, meaning everything to do with life, and technikos, meaning human knowledge and skills. Biotech has proven its importance as a savior of mankind in this 21st century. As said by Kiran Mazumdar, this is an opportunity to really strengthen the Indian biotech sector. Pandemic reveals that it is very important that we get into vaccine production in a bigger way, and we need a lot of studies, research on viruses. Now is the time to rise and shine, live up to the expectation of common people, and help in making the world a better place to live again together. Now I would like to introduce about the Indo-UK project which I am working on. The objective of the project is to optimize forest benefits whilst minimizing impacts of Caspinur forest disease and other zoonotic diseases. This disease is commonly called as monkey fever or in Kannada Mangana Kaile. So as I was telling earlier, our team, the research team comprises of experts from different disciplines, notably from animal health, public health, and the forestry sector, the ecologist. There are many research institutes involved in it. So looking at the disease, Casimir forest disease is a tick-borne viral hemorrhagic fever transmitted by the bite of ticks infected with KFT virus. The disease was first reported during 1956 in Casimir forest of Shimoga district, Karnataka. Currently, KFT is being reported from the states along with the Western Ghat range, namely Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Goa, and Maharashtra. Every year, around 500 cases have been reported with 3 to 10% mortality rate in forest communities. Though vaccine is available, it gives very short-lived immunity. In 2019, there was a huge outbreak in Arulugodu PHC area of Sagara Taluk in Shimoga district. In 2019, around 445 human cases were reported with 15 deaths, and in 2020, 287 positive human cases with 5 deaths have been reported. After we analyzed the present management practices, we found few challenges faced by the public health managers in managing Cassner forest diseases. Some of them are absence of surveillance and its monitoring and erroneous data. There were no historical data access, no proper coordination between different departments, lack of interstate disease data exchange, lack of availability of systemic analytical data for scientific fraternity to conduct research related activities. Result communications were delayed to patients. So we came up with an idea of having an decision support tool. What is a decision support tool? A decision support tool is a software or a web page developed to support analysis and decision makers in making better decisions faster. These decision support tools that merge deep analysis with powerful prediction capabilities can help managers to improve the way they approach information, insight, and the context that surround them. And we did the development using the co-production process, which means that we jointly, but means the researchers and the stakeholders we jointly frame the problems, and the knowledge of both the teams were integrated, and the experimentations were conducted to design this decision support tool. This decision support tool will be the first cross-sectoral One Health tool for management of zoonotic diseases within India. You can find out more about the co-production process in our website, that is www.monkeyfeverrisk.ch.ac.uk. In this slide, you can see how this mechanism of communication works. Basically, if you look at the bottom of the slide, that the blood sample is collected either at the private lab, sometimes from the patient's home, and sometimes from the PHC, CHC, or the general hospital. Once the blood sample is connected, the blood sample is always accompanied with the patient's data sheet, which has his name, the location, and the symptoms, whatever he had during the onset of the disease. All this data is fed into a server. And once the blood sample is sent to the diagnostic laboratory for the diagnostics, the diagnostic laboratory fetches all this information from the server, and they decide for the testing, because the testing varies depending upon the onset and when the patient started getting his symptoms. All these parameters decides which testing method has to be followed. For Cassner forest disease, currently we have two testing methods. One is the RT-PCR and IgM ELISA. If the patient is within 8 days of his onset of fever, we follow the RT-PCR method. If he has already crossed more than 8 days from the date of onset of fever, we use IgM ELISA method for the detection of the diseases. Once the sample is tested and we declare the result is communicated back to the server. Once the result is fed into the servers, in next step, in a real time, the result has been sent to the patients, and also it is displayed through the decision support tool, which is available online. I think you might have come across this kind of mechanism during your, if you have given testing for the COVID. Once you give the sample, you would have received some message containing the SRF number and all those details. And once the sample is tested at the respective laboratory, you would have also received the result of the testing. Similarly, this also works. So this tool, notably, it has a interface and has a feature which displays past and present human, monkey, and tick cases. Health environment and tourism GIS data, wherein health managers can visualize past 6 years positive cases data including their geolocations. In management of this Castor forest diseases, public health managers mainly concentrate on three things. That is, one is human positives and monkey positives and tick positives. Whenever there is a virus circulation in the locality, usually first we will be visualizing monkey deaths in that area. That gives an idea that virus, like, there might be presence of Castor forest disease in that area. As for visualizing all these presence and absence of virus in the area, we have designed the tool in such a way that uh, the public health managers can look at the locations where the human monkey tick positives have come in the last 6 years. One of the key activities we are conducting under monkey fever risk is helping us to predict the risk across the landscape in building of statistic models to predict the patterns during outbreak. In the decision support tool, we can specify the locality of interest to fetch details, and we can also look at the population density within the buffer zone, which is displayed within the help of a color-coded scale. Whenever there is a positive case in a locality, we always take 5 kilometer aerial distance from that location and we mark it as a buffer zone. In this buffer zone, the department has to carry out the IEC activities, that is increasing the awareness activity, and also they have to conduct the vaccination program. Initially, whenever there is a positive case, this tool helps us to identify how much population is present within that buffer zone. Earlier, they used to do this manually by uh, checking for how many PHCs that buffer zone is falling under, and adding up all the population present within that, and it used to consume time. Now everything is available at the fingertip. And in the tool, if you zoom into one of these cases and click on the particular case, a pop-up with all the relevant details of the case of interest will appear. It gives the details of the patient, like what age he is and on which date he was declared as positive, to which PHC it belongs, which taluk it is. All these details are visible at an individual case. There is also a filter to display the subset of data to a particular state, district, and taluk. If you want to look into only some specific district cases, for example, if you want to look into Udupi cases, we can use the filters. And also, if you look at how will these models inform the management, that is the public health managers, and integrate into the health system. The tools has an option to visualize the patient case details. It has a built-in tool to mark the buffer zones around the positive cases. It gives details of cattle density, the forest matrices, and the agricultural matrices. Its main feature is of the digital risk map and the data of population density. The administrators can decide upon what is visible to which user. This tool is available online and anyone can log in and they can have an idea of the disease. The DST also gives the details of nearby health facility, nearby ambulance availability, tertiary care, veterinary dispensary, forest office, the tourist spots, all of with its geolocations. These details are very much important for the public health managers to take decisions during an emergency. And also it has a risk map, which is very useful before the KFD season. Before every KFD season, these risk maps helps us to identify the new season where the virus might emerge. In those areas, as a precautionary measure, we improve or we increase the awareness activities, and also in some cases, we also, as a precautionary measure, we vaccinate those population. The decision support tool increases the likelihood that new foci of transmissions are detected rapidly before or very early in the season, also triggering a rapid response, including vaccination. This tool is already been piloted by Department of Health and Family Welfare Services, Government of Karnataka. So just to show how it works, this slide shows or gives you an information that where exactly the Castor forest disease virus is present very close to the NITE college. The tool helps us to see the location. There is a village or hamlet called Hirigana in Karkala, which is almost 11 kilometers of aerial distance from the college location. it was declared positive during 10th January 2019. I think there was a monkey death in that area, and when we sampled the monkey, it came positive. This is how the tool helps someone to visualize the data. And these kinds of data we have already fed some last 6 to 7 years data of all the three human, monkey, and tick positives. So concluding, such forecasting approach of using co-production to guide production of risk maps that integrate hazard and exposure factors influencing human disease, harnessing a broad range of stakeholder knowledge and expertise across sectors, represent an important step forward in managing zoonotic diseases. As it's an intersectoral responsibility, a well-updated and managed decision support tool could perform ideally and help balance the rapport between departments to manage the zoonotic diseases successfully. Nowadays, if you take examples of coronavirus, both the research and the management is going parallelly. Every day, as per the research outcome, immediately it is translated and practiced for the public health management. And this project was funded by UK Research Council under the Global Challenge Research Fund. I would like to thank the monkey fever risk co-authors, especially the Virus Diagnostic Laboratory Shimoga, BHFWS, Government of Karnataka. I would also like to acknowledge the support and expertise of all the 6 research institutes involved in the monkey fever risk project, namely Indian ICMR NITM, National Institute of Traditional Medicine, Belgavi, ICMR National Institute of Epidemiology, Chennai, ICAR Nivedi, Bengaluru, Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and Environment, Bengaluru, Department of Health and Family Welfare Services, Government of Karnataka, and finally, the Center for Ecology and Hydrology, United Kingdom. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir, for that talk. Now the forum is open for discussion. If students have any questions, they can post it in the chat box.
If
Or even you
students,
can, yeah.
if students don't ask any questions after a few minutes, then I would like to have discussion with Dr. Darshan.
Yes, sir. You can type your question or you can unmute yourself and talk. We have a question, sir.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, the question is whether this One Health technique work for any kind of diseases or is it just specific to zoonotic diseases? Yeah, it can work for any kind of diseases. Currently, the world or the scientific fraternity is concentrating more on zoonotic diseases because when it comes to zoonotic diseases, the uh, stakeholders involved are more than just public health department. For example, if you would have seen during our lockdown period of the COVID-19 emergency, almost all the departments, the health department, the police department, the revenue, animal health, everyone came together. Each of them had their own responsibilities to execute, and they were working in collaboration. And each department's action was depending upon the functioning of the other department or how they handle. So, and also in an example like the bird flu, whenever there is a bird flu, initial information we get it from the veterinary department. If they are able to communicate it immediately to the public health department, uh, the public health department start giving awareness programs, and the people start consuming or integrating with the poultry or such things. So this can be applied in any diseases.
I hope you got your answer, Tafazul. Do we have any other questions?
Students, kindly feel free. Basically, I was also a BE Biotech student. When I was doing my engineering, I had lots of questions. What's next? Then I completed my MTech, and then I completed my PhD. Uh, my PhD was in cancer biology, and right now I'm working in a multidisciplinary project, which is totally different. It's a virology. So people can also ask questions relating to your career or continuing your career in these kinds of research activities.
Sir, if you can tell the scope of biotechnology students in such kind of research institutes, that would be helpful. How they should
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, nowadays, BE Biotech students have lots of scope. Right now, in our project itself, we faced a problem like we wanted some life science student who is good at JS mapping. There is no such course within India which integrates these two specialization. But in many other European countries and US and all other countries, there is some courses wherein JS data and life science courses are integrated because the upcoming future research world is based on the data science. So if you can concentrate on any specific specializations like data science or even the GIS or specific research fields like ecological based, you will be having more opportunities. The research can be classified into mainly into two types. One is the basic research and translation research. Basic research is what most of the academic institutes are doing, wherein the data, whatever comes out, is published as a publication, and it will be helpful for other researchers who are working on it. And there is something called translation research. This project is one such example, wherein whatever the research data we are generating from the field, immediately it is applied for the public health management. It is translated and it is followed immediately by the public health department. So engineers, biotech engineers, has a great options in both sort of researchers. Any more questions?
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Darshan, thank you for the nice talk. I'm Dr. Vaman Rao, HOD of the Biotechnology Department.
Hello, sir. Yeah.
I just want few clarifications.
Yes, sir.
One of them is that in your slide you showed some domestic animals also as reservoirs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
now,
sir.
if the domestic animals become the reservoirs of this KFD,
Huh.
do they develop any symptoms, the domestic animals, or they are silent?
No, sir. No, sir. The larger mammals like cattle, sheep, buffalo, cows, all those things, they just harbor the virus, but they never develop any symptoms.
Okay.
Only the symptoms are seen in the monkey, human, these species. Even the lower mammals, which is carrying the virus and working as a host like rat, mice, shrews, all those things also having high viremia, but nevertheless they're not having any symptoms as such.
Okay. Second thing is the virus transmissible through the cow's milk?
No, sir. No. Till date, it is not proved that the virus is transmitting through the cow's milk.
Okay. One more very curious thing is why is it this virus KFD is spread out only in the western part of Karnataka and it is not seen in other forests? Because there are other dense forests, there are primates in other forests also, like in northern India.
Yeah.
There are forests in Arunachal Pradesh and eastern region of the country. But
Yeah.
it is very, very prevalent and endemic to this area. Why is it so?
Since 1957, when the first it was emerged in Sorba, the first team which started investigating this was the NIV and the Rockefeller Foundation, which came from United States to work on this. Initially, they didn't know what disease it is. They thought it as an yellow fever, and they started, and then they finally understood that it is something that which is caused due to a tick bite. So, for this disease to emerge, the host has to be there, the vector has to be there, and the prevailing conditions has to be there for emerging. So this virus is present specifically in Haemaphysalis species ticks. Currently, the Haemaphysalis species ticks is present only in this Western Ghat region. But previous researchers have shown that the antibodies against this KFDV has been present in many different parts of our country. Like for example, even in Andaman Nicobar forest, when they have sampled some of the mammals and birds' blood, they had found the antibodies against this virus. So there might be presence of this virus, but it would have gone unnoticed because currently the diagnosing or the testing capability is present only in two places in the entire country. That is, one is at National Institute of Virology, Pune, or at its Bangalore field station, and the other one is the virus diagnostic laboratory present in Shimoga. If we start looking at the AFI cases from the Eastern Ghats or some other parts of the country, in some time we might there might be a chances of picking up KFDB from those areas also. And this is the disease which only happens at the forest edge, and this disease is not present in the city or any other town setup because the vectors and the hosts, the tick, especially it's a hard tick, which is present only in the forest and the forest edge. This can be seen only for the states which are touched with or connected with the Western Ghat.
Okay.
Hope I answered your.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last one question, please. This is regarding because monkeys come very close to the human habitation.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes they come and they are on your residence, on the house, all this thing.
Yeah.
Is there evidence of this KFD transmitted directly from monkeys to humans because of their closeness?
No, sir. It never passes from person to person, and at the same time from monkeys to humans. If whenever these monkeys come near to the house setup or the domestic area, usually these monkeys will harboring these ticks on their body. These ticks are like once they take the blood from the monkey's body, they fall off from the body. If these fallen off ticks are started multiplying or increasing their numbers in those domestic area, there might be all chance for the humans to get bitten from the same tick in the next stage. Usually ticks will be having 3 stages. One is larva and the nymph and the adult stage. The larva is of no harm to humans because all these larvae depends upon the lower mammals to take their blood, and the nymph are the major harming stage for the humans because the nymph always tries to depend upon humans. If there are any nymphs fallen from the monkey's body, when these monkeys come from forest area to the nearby homes, there is all chances that the humans can get bitten from those ticks fallen from the monkeys and then get the disease. There is no other route of transmission of this virus. Even only in lab setup, the aerosol way of infection has been proved, that too in 1980s, when there was no pipettes and when the lab people used to use the mouth pipetting. In such cases, I think it has worked, not in any other mode.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Darshan. Thank you.
Yeah.
I finished my questions, and there are some questions
Yes,
posed by students, please.
Yeah. When and how did you know which field of biotechnology you wanted to pursue further studies in? Basically, I am from Shumoga, and my father used to work in forest department, and this biosafety levels, pathogens always used to be a subject of interest to me. I think during our 2005 syllabus pattern, we had a separate subject called biosafety, in which we had all this information on how the lab has to be, how the containment has to be. From that time, I was a bit interested on this Castle forest disease, which was BSL 4 level pathogen. Till date, it is BS4. Uh, uh, the coronavirus is graded as BS2. So such a containment measure it requires. So once I finished my PhD, there was an advertisement wherein they had a recruitment advertisement wherein they were looking for an interested candidate to work on this disease. Just that Castle forest disease name attracted me, and then I took up this job, and it's almost 3 years since I'm working for this project. Now I would like to continue my further research in One Health related researches, because next 10 or next decade is totally the researchers are more concentrating on these emerging zoonotic diseases. You might be also seeing day by day there is emergence of new strains of coronavirus. The researchers are still worried whether already available vaccines or might work on these new strains or not. So I think virology is one field wherein students can think of, and even any multidisciplinary kind. Only thing is, out of 60 students within your class, one of you, or as an individual, you should be having some special knowledge wherein you can excel all your friends or all your counterparts. If you have that skill, always you will be valued in any of the research institutes or in any of the research teams. That's all. Please tell me more about the future perspective. I think I've answered both the questions.
So in this research of your One Health, can you tell me the challenges that you're facing?
One Health concept is very new, that too especially in India. In all other Western countries, it's been started since 2 years ago. But informally, in the past, within India, they have practiced the One Health. Like, for example, if you take an example of polio or any other diseases which already got eradicated from the country, not only the health department worked for it. Now also, whenever there is a polio the vaccination program, almost all departments are brought in for the exercise, and each and every the whole day they conduct a big exercise, and they make sure that every child is covered. Yeah. So likewise, right now these policies and to be done are just now developing. In this budget, in the 2021 budget, the finance minister has announced that this One Health Institute is going to be come up in Nagpur. So currently it's been developing stage. It's at the developing stage. So I'm finding it a bit difficult to make people understand at the different department or for the different stakeholders that how their role and how their efforts is affecting my effort or the health department's efforts in combating the disease. So once we make all the stakeholders to understand their role and importance in facing the disease, I think we can achieve any success in combating these diseases. That's all.
Yeah,
Dr.
thank
Darshan?
you.
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Darshan?
Yes,
See, tuberculosis is a very prevalent disease in India.
Yeah.
Now, if they follow this One Health policy, would it be of advantage, because it has been there for years together, and we have not been able to control it, conquer it, and the problem is antibiotic resistance and all these problems that we are facing.
Yeah.
And it is still prevalent in India. So with this one health policy approach, would it be possible for us to come out with some solution for that?
Yes, definitely, sir. Definitely. I think just 2 days before it was the National Tuberculosis Day, the Prime Minister of India has announced that by 2025 that India should eradicate tuberculosis. I think if we start working together, all together, and looking, you see, this One Health concept is looking the disease at a different perspective. It's always like health department used to be the one hand, the other hand was never, cooperating together for the making it a perfect clap. When both the hands join, I think we can what face any sort of challenges and eradicate all these diseases which are prevalent since a decade or 2 decades.
Yeah. One advantage now which we are having is the digitization.
Yes,
Remember, now
yes,
for the COVID, they are linking that with our Aadhaar and our
yes,
mobile number, and we
exactly,
get
sir.
update and information, all these things. I think they
Yes,
have to follow the same policy for the
exactly.
tuberculosis also, so
Yes,
that they can track the people who are having the disease, and they can track the people who are silent
yes, sir.
and not yet express the disease. So all these
Exactly,
things, if it works properly, then I think it is possible, as per the dreams of our Prime Minister, to get this disease eradicated completely. And
exactly.
people should cooperate. And
Yes,
medication, see, why the resistance developed is because the people were not taking the medication properly as per the
yeah,
dose that has been recommended.
yes,
So since they were not taking the dose recommended, the bacteria developed resistance. That caused a
yeah,
real problem for our country.
exactly, sir.
So with
Yes,
this digitization and tracking, it may be possible
yes.
that we may be able to achieve some goals in controlling this disease. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The,
Thank you.
the functioning of the health department we can divide into two eras now: the pre-COVID era and the post-COVID era. The functioning has totally changed drastically because when I started this project in 2019, when I visited the PHCs and see how they are functioning in handling the public health concerns, in every PHC now also, if you go, there will be a big number of registers wherein they enter the patient's data, his name, all his details of address and the symptoms. Everything was maintained in a book, and then it was entered into an Excel sheet. That Excel sheet was communicated to the taluk and state and to the national level. This is how it used to work. And the HR present at the health department, around 60 to 70% of the HR time used to be spent on data management in pre-COVID era. Now it has totally changed. Now everything has been digitized. The mechanism is so that if there is one positive declared at some remote diagnostic center at any part of the country, immediately that positive case is being reflected at all the different levels like taluk, district, and state. Even the ICMR headquarters at Delhi, they can see the declared positive, for example, which is declared in Karkala, Udupi District Surveillance Unit. This is the what advantage of this digital communication. And if we utilize or bring down the efforts of this health department staff in managing these manual data management practices, I think they can spend their time more on concentrating on the actual practical issues which are seen at the fields.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So how challenging was it for the data collection?
Yeah. In the lab where I was working, they had maintained big registers which had cases from last 2002. Till now, I am unable to find the registers beyond 2002 because in 1987 there was a huge outbreak in Beltangadi of Mangaluru. Currently, there is no case in Mangaluru area. We want to dig out why a place which had the worst outbreak in the past now has 0 cases. So to make all this analysis, especially in zoonotic diseases, the point or the location of infection, where from which area, from which patch the virus is emerging, is important. So for all our case sheets which we collect from the field, we make sure that we collect the latitude and longitude of that location, because virus might not be present in the entire district or in the entire taluk. Only at some patches of the village or some patches of the taluk might be having the circulation of this virus. So if we maintain the data properly, right now I can confidently tell that from 2019 all the data related to this disease has been maintained perfectly, so that if we have some 5 to 10 years data, the future researchers who might be working in the future, they'll be having a good quality of data. If we don't have a good quality of data, all the statistical analysis or all the researchers based on um, substandard data would not be of any use.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
If we do not have any more questions, I will wind up the session. So on behalf of management, principal, staff members and students, I extend my thanks to Dr. Darshan N for accepting our invitation and guiding our students on the skills they need to possess to get absorbed in prestigious research institutes and various career opportunities for our students in this field, and hope to get a chance to hear from you in future too. Finally, I would like to thank ISTE for giving me this opportunity for organizing this talk. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.